Good evening and welcome to the Public Service Committee meeting for Tuesday, February the 11th. Time is 5:31. First item on our agenda is the approval of minutes from our January the 14th meeting. Were there any changes or edits or anything to those?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes from our January 14th meeting.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Meeting from our January the 14th minutes have been approved. Next item on the agenda is public participation. Looking out, seeing no one. We'll move on to the water project updates.
Okay, I think I'll take this first one. I mentioned last night in Public Ways, but I'll just mention again briefly that these ordinances can come to you in three different ways. One way is that we can bring them to you before we even start talking to consultants, before we send out this request for proposal. When we do that, that then delays the request for proposal until the ordinance is in place. A second way to do that is to wait until we have the contract in hand after we've met with the consultants and gotten the contract and then come to you with that completed contract. This way we're doing it is really the most time efficient, which is we're bringing it to while we're going through that process so that we don't have all the final answers, that don't have the final numbers. We've already done the request for qualification, but now we've shortened the timeline. That's the overall timeline just takes. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. So right now, we just met with the consultant today to go over the project and to get what's called the scoping meeting. And then here in the next week or so, we should have some initial numbers for the actual dollar amounts that they'll be talking to us about. But this is for a water line project that's going to be improving the water line on High Street, hopefully from Valley View down to Boyer, and then on Good Street from High Street to the terminus on the west.
West Good, not East Good?
West Good.
Just West Good, okay.
And then that construction would likely happen next year. That's when it's budgeted for. So the design will be this year most likely, and then continue into next year for construction is the plan.
And that was part of the capital plan?
Was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just as the comment, just to piggyback on Mr. Davis's comment, I want to make sure that there's no confusion. What we have listed there is the project budget. It's not what we believe the design cost element will be on those types of things. So you have, it's a little bit of an unusual process, but I think we've improved our process of going out and getting under contract early in the year here through this RFQ process. So that's what's going to be before you. We're only talking about the design consultant at this point, that agreement.
Okay.
Okay, so then for the legislation request here on the first item there would go to council of the whole next week, and then 3 reading recommendation on that, or I mean, would you want to suspend and call because of keeping that timeline moving?
Yes, I think that would be our request, Mr. Stugmeyer, because the reality is we defeat the purpose of going out early in the year for RFQs if we go through a full month and a half, 3 readings, if you will. Mm-hmm. So it kind of it defeated our purpose of getting it out in January, getting qualified consultants to meet with us in February, and then get the approval and moving. We're trying to build efficiencies on the front end of these contracts so we get design started early so that we actually get construction documents early. This one's a little bit less time sensitive, quite honestly. If you chose to go 3 readings, it wouldn't be the end of the world because it's design only for this particular project. It's a little bit different on some of the other ones that we'll talk about, but on this one, again, we asked for it, but the reality is it's a design only budgeted amount this year, so you could, if it was your province, go 3 readings. The only deficit would be we've already had a scoping meeting. We anticipate getting a proposal from them. We might reach terms, if you will, but I would have to say I can't sign that yet because I'm not authorized to do that if we go a full 3 readings. Okay. And that would be the drawback.
And if you're looking at being cautious about that, there's one later that is much more time sensitive. Yes. And so just so you know, we'll get to that in a minute, but okay. Right. Just in case that's important.
All right.
So I would say to the committee, you can make that determination right now if you'd like on this one. And I know, and we know, as administrators and department heads, that it is the preference of council to read these as many times as possible. I think there's an understanding that there are urgent matters that necessitate moving forward. This one probably doesn't meet that urgency requirement, in all honesty, because it's a design-only contract. My crystal ball is no better than anyone else's in the room. If we were to get a design in a completed state by mid-year, for instance, if we move quickly, I would probably approach council to say, hey, would you like to consider a supplemental appropriation to move forward and award this bidding contract this year? And that would just speed up the process of the project a little bit. But again, it's a rather large project involving a main arterial in our community. There are lots of projects, as the committee knows, going on this year. Sometimes it's smart to stagger projects that impact our community, and that might be one that you feel necessary. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. Mr. Davis, correct me if I'm wrong. We don't have any health, welfare, or safety concerns with these particular replacements, so it's not as if we couldn't wait until next year's budgeted season and get it programmed at that point in time. So probably more than you wanted to know, but to give you the complete picture.
I'm always for as many readings as possible. Would you consider 2 readings?
Yeah, well, okay, well,
And
make a motion in for...
I would like to make a motion that we forward the legislation request for the water line replacement project on Good Avenue and High Street, and 2 readings would be.
With an emergency clause,
With
two
emergency clause and
recommendations for 2 readings.
And that'll put us in the beginning of March.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, we will do that then. Next item up is the Pebble Lime request here, and you had sent that out earlier, Mr. Testa, that originally last Friday that was 130 and it went up to 150.
Yeah, so we spent about 130 last year, and Dana Moore, who's our manager of the water plant, basically just with his feel for what he thinks pricing's going to be, thought we'd come in closer to 150 this year, so that's why the change. This is an item that ideally Dana needs to place an order for in early April. So we'd go through the bid process for that. So this is something that, could be read in next week and go another reading and ideally be approved at the first meeting in March.
Okay.
I'll make that motion. An ordinance authorizing the interim director of public service to advertise for and receive bids and enter into contract for Pebble Lime for the City of Wadsworth water treatment plant and declaring emergency for 2 readings not to exceed $150,000.
All right. Do you have a second there, Dave?
Yes, second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, that will move forward with recommendation for 2 readings. Next up is wastewater project, item A. There's updates.
Okay, so the main theme of wastewater projects these days are these SSOs, sanitary sewer overflows. We have a couple projects that are wrapping up. One of them is referred to as number 4. The SSOs were broken into 10 areas, and so when you hear these numbers, there's a geographic area, 10 of them throughout Wadsworth. So when you hear that number, just so you know, it's a geographic area. So number 4, there's a project that's nearly complete. That's wrapping up. There's also a lining project that's in the process as well that's supposed to be wrapping up here in March. So 2 projects that are nearly done. And then we have this one that's coming up that was part of this 10 project at once request for qualification we just did. That sanitary sewer overflow project, we have met with a consultant and we have started that design discussion for reduction of areas 2, 3, 5, and 10, I believe. So it's 4 different areas that sanitary sewer overflow will deal with. And this is an analysis of the data we have so that they can make a recommendation of what to fix. So we've done testing. The testing is mostly smoke and dye testing. So smoke testing is you put something that smokes in the main that comes out, so you figure out where it's coming out. And then you have dye testing where you put stuff in that you can see where the dye is coming in. That combination of testing gave us data. That data will be analyzed by this consultant, then we'll make a list of those projects that need to be done to make corrections. And then this consultant will make a set of construction drawings of those changes. So that's what this project is. And we are planning on having that project constructed in this calendar year as best we can. And as I describe it, I can imagine it's a complicated project, it's time sensitive, so we're really trying to expedite it. So this is the one that if we were to reduce the number of readings, that's the one that would make sense.
Okay.
Well, I think this has been discussed for over a year now and everything.
Yeah, pretty extensively.
So we understand, time is of the essence, to keep this moving because of the EPA mandates and everything that we're under. So I would make a motion then, an ordinance to authorize the interim director of public service to negotiate an intern agreement for professional engineering services for the design of the 2025 sanitary sewer overflow reduction project and declare an emergency, and with the recommendation to suspend the call.
All right.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, that will move forward then for next council reading, for next council at the whole meeting next week. Next up's the truck.
Yeah, thank
Mike.
you, Mr. Chairman. This would be a truck that's used by our water distribution / sewer collection department. So that's the department that's basically maintaining all of the underground infrastructure, if you think about it, from the water treatment plant to the wastewater plant. This particular item for $178,000 is made up of two components, a dump body, which is roughly about $64,000, and then a Freightliner chassis. It's a Mark E dump body, and then a Freightliner chassis. This would be used in a variety of their daily functions. Water main and sewer repairs, they'd use for hauling gravel, sand, dirt for backfilling after repairs, transporting broken asphalt, concrete, those type of things. Also hydrant and valve maintenance, delivering materials for site restorations, emergency response, quickly delivering backfill materials when we've had a water main break. And then really for any type of infrastructure project, transporting materials for installations and upgrades, and also in support of more larger scale rehabilitation work. The recommendation would be to purchase this, based on Matt's instructions to our managers. We'd like to purchase these items and get moving on them as early as we can in the year, just because of the lead times. And I don't know what the lead time is on this, but I would ask council's consideration. Matt, do you have a...
Yeah, I think this is what Mr. Tessa's making reference to is, for far too long, I think we put a lot of rolling stock into our budgets, but then it's mid-year before we see orders being placed. And again, in a truth in budgeting standpoint that I've been trying to implement throughout the city, if it was important enough for department heads to lobby for it in our budget discussions, and it was important enough for me to advocate on their behalf to you all as council for these purchases, then it should be important enough to get your ducks in a row, your quotes ready, and get these things ordered in the first quarter of any year. We understand, and this is a perfect example. The Freightliner chassis, they're backed up. They are a hot commodity. It might take us a long time from the point we order it to see when we actually get that. But the earlier in the year you do that in a budget season, the better off we're going to be situated. The dump body's a little bit easier, but then there's a coordination factor. Once you get cab and chassis, then you got to get it to Henderson, get the dump body put on it. So there is coordination that goes on. But I guess what I wanted to echo in Mr. Testa's sentiments, and that is, I have charged the departments of heads being more diligent in getting their orders placed early in the year. It makes no sense for us to do all this work, for you all to approve it, for us to order cabs and chassis in November. If that's the case, then I shouldn't have advocated on behalf of that, and I should have waited to the following budget year. So they're trying to do that. With that in mind, I'd ask your consideration for a suspension of the rules and emergency so that we can get this placed. this order, please.
What year is the truck that this truck's going to replace?
I was trying to think of that, and I
I
don't
don't
know
know.
off the top of my head.
Oh, that's okay.
We've been doing a
I'm sure it's
rotation.
used
so
We have.
Yeah.
It's something that we've been informed about and we've been doing for a while, so
We were, and it was in the capital plan. I think if I had my budget book in front of you, I could answer that question quickly. This truck's pretty wore out, the one
Yeah, I was
that they're
going to say, it's
replacing.
probably used it up because that department really uses it.
Yeah, well, they're out at all hours of the day and night. There's a lot of dumping going on. There's a lot of asphalt removal, soil removals. This truck's pretty wore out.
I'll make a motion that we move the ordinance for the interim director of the public service to purchase a 2025 marquee dump body from Henderson Products and through the NPP government contract and a Freightliner M2106 plus chassis from Valley Freightliner Inc. And this should be declaring an emergency, and we would recommend to suspend the rules and call.
Okay.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, that will move forward to council the whole next week as well with the suspended call recommendation.
Thank you for your consideration on that.
Next item is stormwater, and there's no, is this correct, no report?
Correct.
All right. Move on to the electric department. You have a minor update on the charging station.
Yeah, a minor
just to
update.
brief.
If you remember, at last month's meeting, we said we're going to commission the station, and we'll start it out at $1 per kilowatt hour as the price, and then bring it back to council with whatever usage data we have for an evaluation of that rate going
In 3
forward.
months.
Yeah. What we're waiting on is whether or not we need to charge sales tax on the price that we charge. So I have reached out to the Ohio Department of Taxation. They've not gotten back to me yet. They've acknowledged that the request and just said somebody will get back to us. But basically, my query to them is, you know, are we responsible for collecting sales tax on this, given, you know, the fact that this came through, you know, federal, basically passed through federal funds supporting EVs, and then it, you know, basically filtered down through the state to NOACA. Originally, NOACA had opined that sales tax would not be collected, but just given
Let's
some
make
of the...
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
we've had a lot of opinions on this thing.
Yeah, so, you know, as soon as we get that information, you know, it's a matter of just working with Kathy and our new treasurer just to make sure we've got everything covered, but that's what we're waiting on.
All right, thank you. And then with, let's, whatever that number happens to be, let's say we do, we'll take a look and see, does that just get added onto our dollar, or if it's just a few cents, we just absorb it? I
Yeah.
mean, it may just, I mean, I don't
would
know
say
what
it
it's going to be.
gets-
If it's
it gets
3
added on.
cents, we
Yeah,
would,
it'd be 6 3/4%.
Yeah,
yeah, if it's the standard, right?
yeah.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to take that obligation out of the dollar that
No.
we're
Right.
trying to
No.
evaluate. So, yeah, that would be an additional amount.
That would go against what we originally
Right,
discussed.
and then would that, where we're at on the legislation, would we have to amend that ordinance? I mean, check into
That's an
that too, so that
excellent
we don't
question.
trip over. It's like, oh, now we have to do this and get that ready. So if there is tax on there and we need to go ahead and add that, just make sure that we don't have to amend that ordinance to be able to turn it on.
Yeah, I'll look into that.
All right. Next up is CityLink fiber update projects, and there's some legislation there related to the one, I believe,
Yeah,
or both
yeah.
of them, actually.
Yeah, and the legislation that you see before you is basically just different dollar amounts, but for the two main purchase categories, the same categories that we had in last year's budget, but you know, we continue to make significant progress on the project, both in terms of aerial fiber placement and splicing. We've got about 22 homes that are ready for service, meaning the infrastructure's been set up, it's been tested. They could be, you know, added to the system. But roughly about 50% of that 2,200 are existing customers, which is what we're focusing on. So that fiber has also been set up and ready for taking on new customers should we attract them. We've got about 475 homes and businesses. About 450 homes have been installed. We've got about 20 businesses that have been moved over. We've got an additional 675 drop connections completed. So the drop connections are basically what's running from in simple terms, the street to the individual house. And we've got about a total of maybe about 450 other homes that were in the process of scheduling the installation. So, one of the pieces of this that's been a little bit slower than I think we anticipated is, we can contact folks about setting up an installation date, but, we're dependent on when they get back to us and when is a good time for them. So we've kind of redoubled our resources in that, we've been doing some very targeted training with our CSRs so they can help out the CityLink staff in terms of reaching out to customers and getting things scheduled. Recent work that's been completed, aerial laterals have been installed on Johnson, Homestead, Silver Creek, Hartman, and Reimer. Splicing work completed on Browse, Longview, Valley View, Good, Lyman, Akron, Boyer, Pardee, College. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll see aerial laterals run on State, Fixler, Ridge, Highview. We expect to complete splicing on Boyer, Pardee, College, Browse, Longview, Valley View, and Good. And then the installation focus areas over the next couple of weeks will be Wolf, Franks, 2nd and 3rd Street, Orchard, Tolbert, Rainbow, and Simcox. Given the cold weather, the project is still moving forward. A lot of what we can do during the real cold temperatures is the drop work. So if you kind of think of it, it's the last piece. You get kind of the big ring, which is the backbone, and then you run it down the streets, and then you go from the connections in the streets to the houses. So all of the drop work can continue even when the weather's very cold out. So that keeps us moving forward. In fact, we've completed the latest drop work on Wolf between West and High, Franks between West and High, and on 2nd and 3rd Streets. So things continue to go well with the project. And at this point, we're largely on track and within budget. So, I expect continued momentum.
Now, are we doing installs at night? Or evening, not night, but evening hours?
Well,
to kind of help people schedule and stuff like that there?
Yeah, so, one of the things, that's a good question. Ralph, I'll have to find that out. We have scheduled a CSR every night till 7 to work on just their various stuff, whether it's utility bills or CSRs, but part of the reasoning for that was to try to catch people for setting up the installations, when they might be home from work. But I'll need to confirm with
Because I know
Kevin.
at one time we were doing that with the internet side of the house. We were working till like 8 in the evening or something like that to make it more convenient for the citizens.
Yeah.
Which would make sense, I think.
Mr. Copley, I think that's an excellent idea. Mr. Testa,
I do too.
I think we should charge ourselves with evaluating, staggering a shift work that might allow us to capture more
Yeah, I think that's a good
installations.
idea,
In the
too.
end of the day, the project is an installation project. It is an enterprise operation, and it is dependent upon subscribers. So
Yep.
I think that's an excellent point.
I always appreciate that service and assist the community as our main goals, and I appreciate that very much.
Because a lot of people can't take off work
Right.
during the day, or they don't want to use their vacation to get fiber installed. So if we could make it convenient for them, maybe we'd get more customers.
It's an excellent point.
And if Glenn gets bored, he could even go out.
Yeah, there you go. You take a long day for that.
Great idea.
He was just looking down, so I thought I'd throw that in there.
You lost that eye contact right away, didn't you?
I was listening.
All right, thank you there, Mr. Testa. And the next two items on there is legislation request, 4 items from Gray Bar Electric for the fiber project.
Yeah, so both of these items the legislation was written in a specific way where it basically says gray bar, or if we can find a specific item, cheaper. And that's because the way the IT world works is that typically if a vendor is the first to register the deal, meaning they're the first one to come to a potential supplier and say, I'm working with, so-and-so customer on this project. It's typical that the manufacturers give a substantial discount only to that vendor. The reason for that is, if you're a consultant or you're an engineer, designer, somebody that's, spending all of your time, say, working with a city in our case, helping them spec out what they need, doing a lot of the legwork to determine what needs to be done, they don't want to take the chance that, somebody else will then come in and actually purchase the project materials and potentially get that with a lower bid. And then you basically get that, the first guys that came to them and, they've done all of the work, but, they don't get the sale of that. So it's pretty typical that you get a significant discount, oftentimes in the neighborhood of about 50% off. And then anybody else that's purchasing materials, and they can still purchase from the same manufacturers, they're just not going to get that price break. So there are some cases, what we found last year is where Aspen, being our original designer, had relationships with some manufacturers that they could get the product a lot cheaper, for example, than Gray Bar could on certain items. This isn't in any way tied to Aspen, but that's the reasoning for the language is so, we're buying lots of different pieces, parts, and there's a good chance that if we kind of specify those individually, we can get better deals on some of those things. The two pieces of legislation, the first one says fiber project materials, bullet point B. This is kind of the outside plant stuff. It's literally the fiber cable, the drop cable, the OTEs, the MSTs. Those are basically kind of the ports out in the field, if you will, that you're connecting drop lines to. And of course, this also includes the fiber for the drop lines as well. The next item, the electronics, this is basically switches and ports. A large portion of this is really what fits in those cabinets you see on some corners. You've got multiple switches, or basically they look like almost like stacked desktop computers, and together they're functioning as the brains and the routing mechanism in the entire network. So the purchase of these items, these particular pieces of legislation, should take us through all of the outside plant construction and the majority of the electronics. There might be some small electronics purchases next year, but even though it's a 3-year project, this should get us through all of the materials, or largely for the construction of the whole project. These are also items that we have some materials on hand, so if this needed to go 3 readings, I think we'd be okay in terms of we'd still have materials. The risk factor is that, just like anything else, that as we get into warmer weather in the construction season, everybody is going to be buying the same things. That's a consideration, just that, would this be something maybe that we'd want to go just a couple of readings on, but it is something that we could go 3 readings on both of these pieces of legislation.
Well, my opinion is with the momentum that we have on the fiber optic project, I would rather get this stuff in and be tripping over it than taking a risk of something. I mean, one nut or one bolt or some being simplistic here, we wouldn't want to hold this up. So, I mean, that's just my opinion as far as getting this in.
Also with the advent that there's possible tariffs on things, that may slow down the process,
right,
be it through the collecting of the tariffs or of the manufacturing and distribution.
Yeah.
So two readings, I would
want to go 2, or?
Thank you.
Okay. I would like to make that motion that we move forward the the materials for CityLink Fiber to Home project from Gray Bar Electric through the partners and Public Service Cooperation Purchasing Organization and so forth, and declaring emergency, and I recommend 2 readings.
Okay. And that's on the first legislation there, so we'll do these one at a time. Any further discussion? Ralph, you said
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, that will be moved forward to council of the whole next week, again, for recommendation 2 readings. And then let's go ahead and move to the vote on the, under item C.
I'll make a motion to propose an ordinance authorizing the interim director of public service to purchase various electronics and electrical materials for CityLink's Fiber to the Home project from Graybar through the OMNIA Partners Public Sector Cooperative Purchasing Organization, or a vendor offering a lower price on a specific item not to exceed $900,000 and declaring an emergency, and with 2 readings.
I second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, that one will also be moved to council of the whole with recommendation for 2 readings and that emergency clause. All right. Next, the downtown infrastructure project, the legislation request here for the engineering services.
Okay,
Mr. Hiscock, or
I'll start on that.
Okay.
So this predates me being in Wadsworth. This project was started and then never quite got to the finish line a few years ago. So this is essentially the primary purpose of this project is to upgrade outdated infrastructure downtown. And so really virtually all of the infrastructure systems will be upgraded in some way. And this first step here is then to go find a consultant to lead this design process, to look at all the infrastructure, to help us figure out what stuff needs to be replaced and how. And then the topping on all of that is then some sort of streetscape and potential vehicular and pedestrian improvements to go on top of all that, and that's all part of that same project. So that's one project with one consultant. So this consultant request for proposal is out on the street. Those proposals are due on February 26th, and so this just would authorize, once we find that consultant, do our interviews, select our consultant, and come up with a fee proposal, then allow Mr. Hiscock to then enter into that contract with that.
And at that point, we would start with again, the public meetings and everything else on input with the design and everything else of what, because the infrastructure, I mean, sewer line going down the middle of the street, sewer line going down the middle of the street, but some of those lines will be different or moved depending upon what the streetscape looks. One kind of depends on the other. Correct?
Yes, and the request for a proposal has a significant amount of effort in that outreach to the neighborhood, to business owners, to property owners. So a significant portion of that, not significant, one key step in that process that the consultant needs to do is make sure that we have that engagement.
With all the business.
Brainstorming and get input on that process as similar to what was done before.
Does it call out who sets on those committees?
I think I can speak to that. So a slight step backwards as you've considered this request for legislation. It is our vision that once we collect the proposals that come in at the due date, we would form a committee that would include administrators as well as council representation on that committee. I've talked to Mr. Williams already. I think he's very interested in serving on that committee. And that we would go through a process. Of course, Mr. Davis would be involved in evaluating those proposals and making some decisions on probably bringing in a consultant or two to say, tell us more about your proposal, and really evaluating that proposal. That's the first kind of step. Once we selected, let's say there were 2 leading candidates and we selected one, entered into scoping discussions with that, got together a proposal and an agreement that we were satisfied, this would allow me to enter into that agreement.
Right.
Then, as part of this proposal process, Mr. Davis did a nice job. We're thinking of this as a utility project, first and foremost. We need to solve.
And that's what it actually
That
is.
is, it's a utility project first and foremost. If you follow the funding of projects, it's a utility project first and foremost. But we understand that there might be an opportunity here, as there was in the past, to take a look at if we're digging up sidewalks, if we're digging up roadways, if we're realigning utility lines. It's an opportunity to look at the above-ground structures and see what, if anything, we could do there. A lot of that, all of that, is going to be placed on this consultant that we select and their ability to talk to stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Business owners, property owners downtown, elected officials, appointed officials, engineering entities.
Citizens.
Citizens. All of the input as part of this contract will be important for the selected consultant to have a good task of managing those meetings and listening to the input and using that information as much as possible to incorporate into their design concepts, and then ultimately coming back and forth with a process that we settle on before we go forward. Again, remember, we have only approved an authorization for design in 25. And so I think it's a large process to get this thing designed and then ultimately get construction documents drawn up. That's all this year's work, if you will. Tackle with that stakeholder meetings and public engagement and utility. I'm sure there's going to be some utility line discoveries that we don't know as we sit here today, and it's very impactful. Everything from above ground to underground to reconfiguration items. So there's a lot there.
Why I'm asking the questions that I'm asking, though, is because back in 2016, what hurt this project was some of the stuff above ground.
Yes.
Okay? And I don't want to see that happen again. The infrastructure is a very important part. It needs to be replaced. It needs to be fixed. But everything hinged on what was going on top. Okay?
Yeah, and
it upset a lot of citizens, both ways. I
Yes.
mean, both ways.
I think the blessing and the curse of that is that the people here weren't involved in that directly, so we know the stories, and we're looking out for those mistakes that were made before, but yeah,
And that's the point I'm trying to make here.
Yeah.
Let's not make the same mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, we need the infrastructure. Let's keep this project moving.
Yes.
You know, but we need to hear from the public, not just the administrators, not just from, the business people. Because this is our history sitting down here.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
community project.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
It's a community project. It's
Yeah.
not one group, okay? It's not one focus group that's handpicked by someone,
Yeah.
okay? It's a whole community. It's a whole community project.
Yeah, I think we echo that, and having lived through some of the mistakes that may have been made process-wise, we're hoping not to repeat that. We understand that there's probably still a lot of good data that came out of some of those things, and we should use that. Why pay somebody to redo something that we had when we have some good data? But we understand that at least for the above-ground improvements, if anything, we need to understand and take all points of opinion and concern into regards, and we plan on doing that. I'm not going to sit here and say that we're going to be able to adopt every idea or thought that comes out, but I think we're taking a fresh look at what we learned from the prior process and an open mind as to what's best for the community and where we go. It won't be a decision of an administrator or a single elected official that carries the day in this process. At least that's not the way we are looking at it today.
Good.
Well, and I think, from that standpoint too, we're at a much different place now than we were then. Back then there was concern for concerts and things like that. We have a pocket park now.
That may not be accessible during this whole process.
Right,
That's probably
right.
true.
But what I'm saying is in the design of that, some of those other designs started to consider, well, where do we have a concert? Well, we have a concert now, so that's out of that gazebo, or, that area of a design, along with, there were some amenities down there for splash pads. Now, we have a splash pad now because we redid all of our parks. So a new set of eyes on everything that we need downtown now is going to be a good thing. You're correct. There's a lot of things in there that were used, or the information that we need, but other things down there, we have them now, and we don't have to implement those in other areas of downtown, so.
I think you're right, Mr.
I
Stockman.
just
Some
want to make
conditions
sure
have
that
changed.
the
Yeah.
top does not hold up the infrastructure.
Right.
I mean, that infrastructure's been crippled for years. I mean, the water flow, the sanitary, everything's been crippled. It needs done, okay? Let's get through these stumbling blocks, okay? And the only stumbling block last time was what was going on top. There was no stumbling block with the infrastructure. Everyone was on board.
Yeah, I think in talking with Mr. Davis, Mr. Kopp, and all of the committee, we understand this and believe this to be a utility infrastructure project, first and foremost. And we believe that you and I and others don't necessarily need to be engaged in the redesign of those utilities. In fact, that design should get going once we select someone, and probably should dictate what and where we are able to do things on the surface based upon where the best utility placements are.
Right.
So it's driving the decisions of the above ground, but they can get going on it because we need the infrastructure fixed. And if we remain focused on that collectively, I think it'll help us make better, more efficient, and more consistent decisions above ground in terms of that. I think the utilities need to drive this project.
I totally agree 100%.
And all that input from the businesses down there will help the utilities as far as trying to minimize the impact that it has on businesses. Knowing what their input is, what issues they have, deliveries and things like that, they will have that, and some things might not be able to design around, but some things you might be able to. And with that input, they'll have that in mind, and maybe we can minimize that. You're remodeling your house. You're going to have issues, but still. So
There will be inconveniences, and I will dare say, as you all know, at some point the public utility stops and the private interest
Correct.
begins.
Yep.
There will
What's
be
it gonna
costs
cost?
to
Right.
properties and business owners that we need to consider.
We need to make sure they're aware of all that.
Yeah, getting that stuff as much as we can up front so folks can plan is important because it's not just a city project, it is a community project, and it has specific effects on folks, and there is interest downtown. And quite honestly, their wallets or purses
A lot of
too
impact,
are
right.
going to be impacted to a certain degree. Saying that, without getting too far down the road, we also have talked about as a group phasing of the project. There might be different impacts at different times. We won't know that till we get to the construction part of this project, but I think planning for that and doing some due diligence and making sure that stakeholders are aware of that phasing approach is going to be important too. As in all construction projects, it's going to be inconvenient at different periods of time downtown, and that doing the best we can to acknowledge but lessen that inconvenience is going to be an important part of this project too.
And we got some major changes coming into downtown with the 5-6 building going up on Broad
We
Street.
do.
Right.
That drove a lot of the last design.
You're right.
Because of the traffic impact and stuff
right,
like that.
and again, that's what I'm saying. A lot of the things
there's
that
a
we
lot of different things here that need to be addressed.
Right.
redesign around.
Some of the projects that you authorized this year, while they're not directly engaged in that, they directly have an impact. The southwest parking lot
Yep.
improvements, there was a method to our madness to get that done this year, or as much as we can, because where are people going to need to park when they can't access Main Street parking for a period of time? So making those improvements now, it all sort of comes together for us to a certain degree.
Right.
My question is the timeline for the design, not the construction, but the design. You indicated you were trying to get it done within this budget year, or you believe it'll take longer?
The RFP expects them to finish the design by the end of 2025.
And so we could move to the first phase early in the year so we can get construction during that construction season possibly in 2026.
We would have construction documents at the end of '25, you could build
Okay.
immediately in 2026.
Well, that's aggressive, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
It is aggressive, but,
It is
but we
aggressive.
want that, and that should be an important part of the group who decides which consultant to go to, our belief that they can meet that
You can meet that
expectation.
requirement.
That's great. Thank you.
And then just lastly, that if we do 2 readings, that will really won't affect the schedule. A 3rd reading could potentially delay in case that's important.
Okay, so two with those, go ahead, Rob. I'm sorry.
I honestly feel that this one needs to go 3 readings, just for the public input, okay? We need to let the public know that we're going to hit this project again, and get ready to, give us your input.
Your reasoning not to go to the 3rd week in March, can you tell us the difference in that 2-week time period, what you're going to be able to do or not do?
So the completion, so we're going to get proposals in end of February. It'll take us about a week or so to really look at those, analyze those, and put some initial scoring on those. Then about another week or so to do interviews with the consultants, which puts us into the, and then at some point, some selection after that. So we're in about, it's about a 3-week process to really come to a final determination, which at the 3rd reading would be possibly delaying that slightly, but it wouldn't be catastrophic.
The 3rd week of March kind of fits within that, possibly?
It
And
does.
might be within just a couple days?
It does.
Okay. So that we have one this next week,
And
and then 2 in March, and we should be able to fit within your schedule. Okay.
Might be a week or a couple days
Yeah.
off.
Just a
Okay.
few days.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
okay.
right.
I mean, but a project of this magnitude, I just want to make sure it's out there to the public that they know what we're doing.
Sure.
Okay.
All right, if somebody want to make that motion then?
I'll make that motion that we make an ordinance authorizing the interim director of public service to negotiate and enter into an agreement for professional engineering services for the design of the downtown infrastructure project not to exceed $3,120,000 and declaring an emergency. And our recommendation is 3 readings.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, that will go forward to council next week, so, all right.
I am dismissing Mr. Davis if the committee does not mind.
Okay, thank you, sir, appreciate it.
Have a good evening.
Next up is a legislation request for the increase in some rates, or actually adding, I guess, the trolley line house rental fees.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the legislation reads as though, we're updating rates at all the park facilities, but really, we're just adding the trolley line trail house and pavilion to the section of the ordinance. So that hasn't been there. But the rates that we're proposing are different than what our current rates are. So in short, we're proposing increasing rental rates for the trolley line trail house and the outdoor pavilion at the trolley line park, largely because we need to offset the increase in cleaning costs. So over the last couple of years, we've seen cleaning costs escalate by about 50%. With this proposal, too, we're also recommending a 2-tier rate structure in that people that are not residents of Wadsworth would pay a higher rental fee than someone that is a resident of Wadsworth. There was a lot that went into this, but in simple terms, we did a survey of lots of different surrounding areas in their park amenities, what those amenities offer, best guesses as to, the condition of those based on interviews with employees at other cities, and compared that to what we're offering. And the trolley line house is it's well maintained if you've not been there in a while. It's a very nice facility, and there's relatively a high amount of demand. We had approximately 50 rentals last year. And then some additional, probably another 5 to 10, where nonprofit organizations rented the house for just a couple of hours for one of their meetings. So basically, the findings of the rate study is that Event spaces in neighboring cities typically range anywhere from about $60 to $225 a day. Pavilion rentals range anywhere from $30 to $100 per day in nearby communities. It's typical that non-resident rates in other cities are typically about 30 to 50% higher than the rates that's charged they charge to their residents. And as I mentioned, cleaning costs have gone up by about 50%. So we pay $500 a month for cleaning of the trail house, and that's regardless of usage. So if it's used 1 day a week, the cleaning company is getting $500, for that month. If it's used every day of the month,
$500.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So that's been the trade-off, and that's we were probably closer to around $4,200 thereabouts in years past. The longtime person that we had worked with that did City Hall and also had a cleaning contract for the trolley line house doesn't do that anymore. He's moved on to something else. We've gone through a couple of rounds last year of cleaning contractors and bidding those out, and we were surprised that everybody's prices were a lot higher, which I think speaks a little bit to why that guy got out of the business. So our current rates, apply right now, whether you're a resident or not a resident. Want to rent the trail house, it's $150 a day, plus a refundable deposit of $150. If you want to rent the house for just a couple hours for a meeting, it's $10, and that's only available to nonprofits if they're based in Wadsworth. So there is no opportunity for a nonprofit that's outside of Wadsworth to rent the facility. The proposed rate would increase that by $50 to $200 per day for residents, increase it from $150 to $275 per day for non-residents. Nonprofits, a slight increase up to $20 per meeting, and then the refundable deposit would go up to $200. I want to mention the reason for an increase to the nonprofits is because typically, although they're only using it maybe for a couple of hours, it also prevents someone else from using it that entire day. And Mr. Stugmeyer, you had asked me about the hours of operation. So typically, you could rent the facility from 7 a.m. to midnight.
Okay.
We have the ability to remotely lock and unlock the doors to the trail house. The requirement is that, during the time that you're renting it, you have to have at least one person 21 years or older that's at the property at all times, meaning you couldn't just come in the morning, set up, and then leave, and then come back, 3 hours later for the party or something like that. So somebody has to be there that entire time. Now, the reality of it is, most people are not getting there that early. Most
Right.
people are not staying that late. It's prevalent that we'll see baby showers there, graduation parties, birthday parties, those type of things. And honestly, those are typically in the afternoon or early evening type events. I will say that looking at last year's rental history, roughly about 30% of the reservations were made by non-residents. Looking at these proposed rates and multiplying it by the number of residents that we had last year and the number of reservations by non-residents, probably add about $3,600 of additional income over the course of a year. Now that's if the rental, the quantity of rentals stays the same and the proportion between residents and non-residents stays the same. The rationale for the adjustments is, it helps to offset higher maintenance and cleaning costs. The rates are still competitive with similar facilities in nearby cities. The higher deposit, security deposit amount encourages renters to take better care of the facilities. And in introducing kind of the two-tier system, provides more fairness to residents who are paying
right.
taxes. If approved, the rates suggested date would be March 1st of this year. But that's a kind of a placeholder date I put in there. And you know, the recommendation would be for consideration of the change to the ordinance to not only put the trolley line trail house rates in there, but to put the new rates in there. And then, although I've summarized it, basically I've included the proposal behind the legislation.
Well, I think the rates are very fair. I mean, realistically, you go out there, you're renting a house, you've got restrooms, HVAC, kitchen facilities, the whole thing, and to do that for a day, I mean, I think these are very fair. I agree with the reduced rates or different rates for residents and non-residents. I'm fine with all that. The one question, sort of outside this I have, so all of our other facilities in town are currently the same rate for residents and non-residents? Like Pavilion at Memorial Park, that's the same thing as someone from outside the city as it is inside? I mean, do we need, you know, committee, do we need to look at those for the whole thing?
It's actually right on your,
Yeah,
on the
it's
proposed
different.
ordinance, you can see it. So for instance, if you mentioned the pavilion at Memorial Park, local groups, individual organization, that's a $45 fee. For out-of-town groups, it's a $70 fee.
Okay.
It's in item 9406C, 1 and 2 in the proposed ordinance. You could see that.
So it'd be on the first page of the ordinance.
Of the draft proposed
I was
ordinance.
back.
Oh, okay, yeah, I was.
Yeah, you were probably
I'm
looking
sorry,
at the
yeah,
rationale
okay, all right.
document kind of thing.
Okay.
I would, if I could, and I'll certainly take any questions, but just to piggyback on what Mr. Testa said, you know, one, I'm going to thank Mike for the work he's done on this. We didn't just take your request to do something with the fees and throw a number on it that we thought. We analyzed what's happening in other communities. We looked at what's fair to our community, and really, we don't want to negatively affect the rental capacity of that. I mean, the whole idea is to not make it a cost that only the taxpayers in the general fund are taking on because of these cleaning fees. So a couple of things to note. One, remember that with or without a change, we still require the users of the trolley line house to clean up. And there's a requirement that they place their debris and trash in sufficient containers and do that. That's still there, that's still ongoing. The deposit helps us ensure that really happens, or if we see damage as a result of them not taking those due diligence steps. But I think the numbers that we placed on there won't negatively affect what's happening. And I will add to Mr. Testa's data comment that we already have, I think, upwards of 25 reservations in February for the use of the facility throughout the year. And there is a wide array of both outside entities as well as in-community residents that are looking to use this. So I think there is a urgency, if you really want to evaluate what these numbers will result in, to get this implemented as soon as possible. And so I know Mike mentioned that March 1st is a placeholder, but I think it's important. If you agree with it and think you can make a decision on it, let's implement this and see where it goes. Let's just like we evaluate other programs. Did it hurt our rental, the number of rentals that we received? How many did we actually get after implementation? So I think there's still some data points to take a look at here. But we heard, the reason we're doing this is we heard what the committee has asked us to do, and we think this is the right direction to go. Not saying it's the only opinion, but we believe it's learned, it's based upon data, and it's fair in terms of what's happening in other surrounding communities.
Okay.
I think it's fair also.
Yeah, I do too.
I really do.
I do.
Is there any additional public relations advertising that, or ways you're changing, using WCTV, using other ways to maybe promote this, and that'll help also? I think we talked
Yeah,
about that
we did.
also.
Yeah, we talked about marketing it more. I've been in conversations with Ayton Anderson, who does a lot of our marketing, in working up some ideas that include, for example, including a bill message that it's available for rental. But there's, other things we could do, for example, having a flyer posted at the library, or making it more prominent or featuring it at different times of the year on our website. Yeah, there is a plan to market that more.
Okay, agreed. Thank you.
And
I'll make a motion then that we amend Section 94.06 of the codified ordinance of the City of Wadsworth to increase the rates to be charged for reservations at the city park facilities and declaring an emergency.
Second.
with suspend and call on that?
What's your thoughts?
What's your thoughts on suspending, so that we can get,
I'm not a suspend and call person, but I understand what Matt's saying, because March 1st starts the reservations and everything.
I think
Because I
suspend and call.
scratched
I'm
it
with
off on
suspend
there
and call.
for
Right.
April 1st.
Right.
I'm suspending
yeah.
call, yes.
Okay, all right, with that
I'll go with that.
recommendation. All right. No further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, that will move forward to council of the whole at the next meeting with a recommendation to suspend and call. Thank you.
Because I've been asking for this for a year because of the increased cleaning costs and everything, so, I mean.
And I appreciate
It's
to see the next item on there, too. And I know Mr. Copley is really excited.
Really excited about
Well, yeah,
that.
because we've been asking for, we asked for that as well, the yard waste.
That's right. Thank you for your consideration on that last item.
So next up is the yard waste analysis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The packet that I'd sent out on Friday included the basic framework of this analysis, but one thing that I was waiting on was an update on the better judgment, a more current estimate of what the resale value might be for the vehicle that would be replaced by a new vehicle. So originally, Robert had done an analysis a couple of years ago, and at that time, the marketplace was a little bit different, so the cost of the new vehicle, about 50% of that could be offset by what we would be able to sell an old vehicle for.
And that was way too high.
Was his estimate on that. A couple of things, we're 2 years down the road in this. The vehicle market's not, from an economic standpoint, in the same condition, but we've also developed a transmission issue with the vehicle that would be sold. So Bill Heckler put pencil to paper and came up with what he thinks is a more realistic estimate for the disposal vehicle or the salvage cost of that. So the numbers that you see for 2024 are actual numbers. The 2025 are our budgeted numbers. I will point out that David Sakala, who's our sanitation manager, had suggested to me that our sticker revenue be increased to $35,000. I didn't increase it because in the budget we estimated at $30,000. And to be fair, if you kind of look from 21 to 22 to 23 to 24, you see a little bit of a downward trend. So I tend to be conservative in the analyses that I put together, and that's what we've done here. Ultimately, the truck piece of this, changing it from where Robert had estimated about $100,000 in resale value down to the 15, it probably takes the amortization cost or the increases the yearly cost from roughly $9,000 a year to $18,000 a year. Mm-hmm. So the two numbers that you see there, the break-even price without vehicle replacement of $1.74, that is assuming that we basically sell the same number of tickets, the 30,000 tickets, what our estimate of costs per our budget, and if you look at the ticket sales minus what the budgeted cost would be, we'd be in the hole by about $22,000. So if we increased the price of the sticker from $1 to $1, say 75, we largely break even. We actually make a very small profit if the volume.
Without the vehicle.
Without vehicle.
That's right. Yeah, and if we were to increase the price to $2.35, that would cover the operating deficit plus basically the cost of amortizing the vehicle minus its lower salvage cost over, say, 12 years. So typically, vehicles have about a 10 to 15-year useful life. I estimated it at about a 4% interest rate over just 12 years to be conservative. But it's important to remember that that's assuming that we still sold the same number of stickers. Typically, when you increase the price on something, the volume of what you sell goes down. That's probably, just need to consider that for the.
Is there any way that we could possibly, I mean, is the yard waste program the only thing this vehicle is used for? I mean, what I'm looking at is getting more useful life out of the vehicle, an extra 3 to 4 years.
In another budget or another area.
I don't believe we are using that yard waste vehicle for anything other than yard waste, other than one-offs, if you will. So maybe David believes, hey, let's run that truck out to pick up X, Y, and Z. That's what I'm meaning by one-offs. It is primarily the yard waste truck, and there's a.
I didn't know if we were backfilling with it, we could use it, its useful life would.
We can do that with it, and there's a uniqueness to it because of the lack of CDL requirements on it. So it has potential, Mr. Copley, is what I would say to the committee as I sit here today, but we're not using it for anything other than yard waste, other than one-off needs that we use it for. You know, if a truck happened to go down on a route and we didn't have the ability to use others, it'd be difficult to use that truck for cart, pickups, a regular router. It's not designed.
It's a rear loader.
Yeah, it's not designed to that. It would be much more manual work on those kind of things. Yeah. But I think we have used it again. I'm trying to think of an example, but I can't think of one off the top of my head for one-off type things.
Because I know that we're only getting like 12 years out of our normal fleet.
Yeah, I think this truck is probably a more than 12-year lifespan.
I was asking maybe 16 years.
Perhaps.
Which at 4 years, we could maybe look at a $2 sticker instead of a $2.35 sticker.
I was looking at a $2 sticker and then reevaluate. Let's make sure we reevaluate this. Maybe not this year, but this time next year, early in the year, January, February.
Because the other thing too is the 30,000 or the 30,000 sticker sales might go down, but that's a conservative number too. So we have a little bit of cushion there to keep it at $2 as well, and not.
Right. To put it in perspective, increasing it from 30 to 35,000 probably covers another $5,000 in operating costs. Maybe based on the trend, it would be unlikely to go down to 30, but that is what we put in the budget as revenue, and I'd rather be conservative.
That's fine. I mean, I just think that, that $2 would make an easier hit per se.
Right.
And easier for the vendors too.
Right.
Because like I bought up in 2021 and 2022, we spent $187,000 to lose $22,000.
Right.
Okay, that was my concern. We're not in business to do. If you were in business, you wouldn't be in business.
Well, and realistically, it's a valuable service that's provided that a lot of other cities don't do, and for $2 to get that hauled away, if that's what you need, that's not a high fee.
I think that's a very perceptive comment, Mr. Stugmeyer. This service gets used. And people are still going to need their yard waste removed next year or whenever we bump this fee up. But what will be the result of an increased fee? I think it's safe to say that the assumption that Mr. Testa used is a good one, and it's one that's proven true when you raise prices of services in other areas. But we know this isn't going to go away, and we know that there are users of this service. And having that fee at what it's been for as long as it's been, it's probably the right time. Listen, we also like to do the data and the analysis, like Mr. Parrish said. If you're serious about it, let's set the rate. Let's get an ordinance on next time to consider it, and then let's analyze. We've talked about on several different issues here in the committee, but that's what we're supposed to do. That's how we're supposed to be public administrators. Let's look at what are the impacts of our changes, and let's evaluate. And we can do that in this program too.
Well, and this would be a good time of year to do it because we're coming up on spring. And again, you're going to, just like when you analyze it, you'll probably see a dip in those numbers. Well, I'm not paying, I'm not paying the extra cost. But then all of a sudden, somebody's going to realize what a value it is for an extra dollar. And again, by July, those numbers may go back up.
So I really want to haul all my stuff out, out. And,
I think
do that
everyone that uses it realizes the cost of business goes up.
It's always been $1, hasn't
It's always been $1.
It's always been $1.
Right. Right.
So.
And what, 13, 14 cents, I forget what's the number, the stickers themselves cost 13 cents.
Yeah.
And that, so you're not even paying $1 to haul it away, so.
Adhesive and neon colors cost money.
Yeah. So do we want to recommend legislation
Yes.
here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, since I'm the one that's been complaining about this for so long, to increase the yard waste for Mr. Testa's analysis to $2 per sticker with an evaluation at the end of this year for next year. Okay?
Second.
Because that's not going to break us even, but it's going to get us closer to being, even.
And we'll
Maybe you
do,
could come up with information on how the truck's used, if we could look at,
We could do that.
exactly how many times it's used and stuff like that there.
Definitely.
and we'll do 3 readings with
Three
an
readings,
emergency,
yeah,
with
let
an
the people
emergency
know.
clause.
Yeah.
So that'll take us into March, which is still plenty of time to
Are we doing the vehicle too, the purchase of a new vehicle? Or not at this point? Okay.
not at this point.
So I would estimate that at $2, we probably generate a positive or a surplus of about $8,000 over our operating costs.
Okay, all right. Very good. Oh, I'm sorry, I guess we have to vote on that.
I said second. I said second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign. All right, that will move forward with the emergency clause and a recommendation for 3
I
readings.
want to again compliment the administration for listening to our concerns and carrying through with it very much.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
All right, again, thank you, good job there. And next item, you had, I don't know if you, whatever you want to touch on, the electric department updates and
Yeah.
subscriber updates. I know sometimes they're there for us to read, but.
Yeah, and I've tried to make some minor formatting improvements to make it a little bit easier to read those, but there's nothing really to highlight that you can't look at. But I would mention that at our next meeting, the March meeting, the folks from Efficiency Smart would like to come and give approximately about a 20-minute presentation on what they do. So if that's okay with everybody else.
Sure, yeah.
Could you
that's
tell
fine.
us what Efficiency Mart, what their issues are and what their program is?
Yeah, amongst other things, you'll often see us advertising, stuff related to like smart thermostats.
Yes.
If you're familiar with what the old, and I can't think of what the name of the old, it's now the Community Energy Savings Program, basically where you're using, the program allows software to control various thermostats and devices.
Smart thermostat devices.
Yeah, to offset usage during certain peak demand days with the idea that will then result in lower costs for the following year. So they've actually got a number of different things, but the big thing that they're involved with are the thermostats. In the past, they've provided rebates for people that were participating in what's now the community, Peak Rewards was the name of the old, it's now the Community Energy Savings Program. So I suspect that they want to give an update on just how the program went last year.
And do they also do the appliance, when you buy a new appliance, is there a rebate? There was some kind of program with that, too.
Yeah, and they did the appliance recycling event at the stadium in the fall. These were the guys that
Did it?
hosted it. So it's a part of AMP.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a subsidiary, if you will,
Okay.
division of that. They did LED light bulb programming for a while. They've done lots of different things to try to spur more efficient use of our power. More efficiency leads to savings for our community, leads to savings within our energy division in terms of power supply usage.
All right, very good. And of course, the meetings are recorded, so someone can watch that. But maybe if you have Sanderson put something on the website that presentation is going to be done. If someone from the public wants to come in and just see it that night, they can have maybe some discussions with them afterwards, just to get it out there, since they're coming in to do that. So,
Would the committee consider perhaps starting our meeting at 5?
I was going to say that's what I was going to say. Do we want to move it up a little bit?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I didn't mean to force that on the
No,
committee.
no, that's-
You
If
did.
we're doing
Makes sense.
20 minutes extra, this is a very thorough and good committee, and we have lots of important
Right.
business. Normally, this is an adder, if you will, so.
No, so
Sorry about
we'll
that.
go ahead and start the March meeting at 5 p.m. instead of 5:30. Very good. Is there anything else from any of the committee or administration?
Nothing further.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate everything, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned. Time
Thank you.
is 6:45.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.